Journey Ann was born on January 10, 2013, to Brandy Boyd and Richard Blake Cowart. Brandy already had a son, born 4 years earlier, but relatives felt she struggled as a mother. When they learned of her second pregnancy, some family members quietly hoped she might consider adoption. In April 2013, Journey's father, Blake, disappeared from the couple's home along the Etowah River. Blake was known to have issues with drugs, and on May 7, 2013, a fisherman found his body in the river just 15 yards from the house he shared with Brandy. The sheriff clarified that his death was unrelated to Journey. Brandy's grandfather noted that after Blake's death, he rarely saw his granddaughter. Concerned for Journey's welfare, Brandy's uncle, Dale Boyd, approached the Department of Family and Children's Services, DFCS, seeking help. He informed intake worker Lucy Simpson that he suspected Brandy was using drugs and had her 7-month-old daughter with her, likely at her mother's house. Although he couldn't provide an exact address, he offered general directions. However, the social worker never managed to locate Journey or open a case file, according to court testimony. Brandy eventually resurfaced, contacting her mother via text, claiming that she needed diapers, formula, and clothes for Journey. Her mother suspected this was when Brandy began using meth again. A week before Journey's death, Brandy's mother saw the baby. She had planned a birthday party for Journey Ann on January 18, 2014, but 30 minutes before the event, Brandy texted to cancel, saying Journey wouldn't be attending. 3 days later, on January 21, 2014, Journey was rushed to Cartersville Medical Center by Brandy and her boyfriend, Austin Levi Payne. Tragically, Journey was not breathing. The investigation soon revealed evidence of child abuse. Brandy and Austin were later indicted by a grand jury on multiple charges, including malice murder, felony murder, cruelty to children in the first degree, aggravated battery, and battery. The charges were escalated after an autopsy revealed the extent of Journey's injuries. She had suffered a fractured skull, blunt force trauma, and older injuries, including healed fractures in her leg and ribs. In May 2015, both Brandy and Austin were convicted on 15 counts. 6 counts of felony murder, 5 counts of cruelty to children in the first degree, 3 counts of aggravated battery, and 1 count of battery. The judge sentenced them both to life without the possibility of parole. On the evening of June 24, 2022, shortly after 9 p.m., the Paulding County Sheriff's Office responded to a call about a domestic disturbance at a home in the 700 block of Woodwind Drive, Rockmart, Georgia. The caller reported that a woman, later identified as Darlene Brister, was inside the home attempting to stab the other occupants. During the emergency call, the caller also stated that the house was on fire and that all occupants were still inside.
They think that the mom had already killed the baby. From what I understand, the mom had killed the infant and was trying to kill the other children. They just jumped out the window, escaping in the chaos. But I can see flames coming from the front door, like their house is engulfed.
What's coming through my head is, it's so much, it's just so much.
How do you process the unthinkable? Ricky Brister set to bury his 3 youngest children as his wife sits in jail, accused in their killings.
She was hurt. She lost it.
When deputies and firefighters arrived, they entered the home to rescue those inside, and the fire was eventually extinguished. Investigators then began working to piece together the chaotic scene. After the fire was put out, authorities discovered 7 children inside the home. 2 of them, a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old, were pronounced dead at the scene, both having died from multiple stab wounds. A 5-year-old was also found with multiple stab wounds. Although rushed to a local hospital, the child later succumbed to their injuries. 2 older children were also injured in the attack. One was in critical condition upon the arrival of authorities, but both ultimately survived. Darlene was still on the property and taken into custody. In September 2022, prosecutors submitted court documents announcing their intention to seek the death penalty for Darlene Nicole Brister. They pointed to several aggravating circumstances that, if proven, could warrant such a sentence. These included accusations that Brister committed multiple murders while also engaging in felonies such as aggravated battery and first-degree arson. Additionally, the state alleged that the murders were outrageously, wantonly vile, horrible, and inhuman, involving acts of torture and extreme cruelty. Darlene avoided the death penalty by agreeing to a plea deal in which she pled guilty to 3 counts of malice murder for the deaths of her children. In exchange, charges of felony murder, aggravated assault, arson, and cruelty to children were dismissed. January 2024, Paulding County Superior Court Judge T. David Lyles sentenced Darlene to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Deborah Post confided in her friend Annette Kelly that she wanted someone to kill her husband. Kelly introduced Deborah to Bernard William Green, to whom Deborah eventually paid $13,000 to carry out the murder. Green then enlisted Michael Razor to be the gunman. Armed with information about Jerry Post's work schedule, Green drove Razor to Jerry's workplace, where he was preparing his truck for a trip. Using a gun Green had provided, Razor shot Jerry Post to death. 6 months later, Razor's brother Gerald, hoping to claim reward money, provided information to authorities that led to murder charges against Green, Deborah, Kelly, and Razor. On October 25, 2001, Eugene Jerry Post, 59, was shot 5 times with a .45 caliber gun at Royal Metal Products in Douglasville, where he worked as a truck driver. His body was discovered hours later by a co-worker. Douglas County Sheriff Phil Miller stated that Deborah Post, 47, orchestrated the killing either to collect life insurance or simply to get rid of her husband. Police had few leads until the owner of Royal Metal offered a $10,000 reward, which generated new information. Deborah, Annette, and Michael all pled guilty to charges related to their roles in the plot and testified against Bernard Green at his trial. Green was ultimately convicted of murder and sentenced to life without parole, along with Deborah and Michael. Glenda Sue Brown and Christy Lynn Crider were charged in separate but identical 18-count indictments with the murder of Christy's father, Harold Crider, aggravated assault on Christy's mother, Judy Crider, as well as armed robbery and numerous other offenses. Christy entered into a negotiated plea agreement in exchange for the state's concession not to pursue the death penalty against her. She was sentenced to life without possibility of parole, and she testified against Brown at trial. Brown was found guilty as charged. Brown and Christy plotted to rob and murder Christy's parents. In preparation for the crime, Christy obtained a .38 revolver from her parents' bedroom and brought it to Brown's home. Later that night, both women returned to the Crider home wearing gloves and black clothing and armed with the .38 revolver. As Mr. and Mrs. Crider returned home from work, Christy came out of her bedroom and began firing the .38, striking her mother in the arm. Brown took the pistol from Christy and fired 4 shots at Mr. Crider. Both parents retreated into a bathroom. The perpetrators had emptied the 38th of bullets, so Christy got her father's shotgun, loaded it, and gave it to Brown. Mr. Crider left the bathroom in an attempt to talk to his daughter. At that point, he and Brown struggled, and according to Christy, Brown shot him with the shotgun. Mr. Crider fell back into the hallway. During the time that Mrs. Crider was in the bathroom, she could not see what was happening, but she heard Christy ask, "Do you want any of this makeup?" A female voice replied, "I don't know." Mrs. Crider recognized the voice as belonging to Christy's girlfriend Brown because Brown had telephoned the Crider home numerous times to talk to Christy and had identified herself. Mrs. Crider testified that Brown had a distinctive voice, and the minute I heard that, I knew who that voice belonged to. Brown also told Christy to throw a candy dish on the floor to make it appear as a robbery. Brown told Christy that she had finished off her father, and she gave Christy the shotgun with instructions to shoot and kill her mother. Christy shot at Mrs. Crider, and the perpetrators ran from the house. They took with them Mrs. Crider's handbag containing cash, her wristwatch and jewelry, her makeup, Mr. Crider's wristwatch and engraved cigarette lighter, and 5 credit cards which they removed from a safe in the master bedroom. Mr. Crider died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds. He also sustained several knife wounds to his arms, shoulders, and back. Mrs. Crider was severely injured during the attack. The women drove to a nearby convenience store where Brown was filmed on a surveillance tape, dressed in dark clothing and purchasing gasoline, beer, and cigarettes. After leaving the store, they drove to Brown's apartment, discarding the shotgun, gloves, and some clothing along their route. Mrs. Crider told the police that her daughter Christy and her daughter's girlfriend, Brown, had perpetrated the attack. The police located Christy's car parked at Brown's residence, and the 2 women were found inside the apartment. Brown consented to a search of the premises. Credit cards and jewelry belonging to Mrs. Crider were found under a sofa cushion. Christy was arrested and taken into custody. The next day, Brown sought out the police investigators and gave them a voluntary statement in which she described the attack in great detail. She claimed that Christy planned and carried out the crime, and afterwards told Brown everything that had occurred. Brown's information led the police to 3 guns, a bloody butcher knife, and 4 latex gloves concealed in a wooded area near the Crider home. Jewelry, a cigarette lighter, and makeup belonging to Mrs. Crider were found in Brown's purse. Kirsty Hannah Flood was charged in connection with the death of Fallon Fridley after police responded to a call on December 9, 2020, about an unresponsive child at an apartment on 507 Monterey Parkway. Fallon, who passed away that day, was under Flood's care as her babysitter and family friend. An autopsy later revealed that the child had suffered severe injuries leading to her death. Phone records showed that Flood had searched for disturbing topics, including what type of people enjoy abusing other people's children, what does it mean to have a sudden urge to beat a child that's not yours, I hit my child and feel guilty, and why do people abuse? Initially, Flood claimed that Fallon had hit her head on a park slide and that she didn't wake up after being put to bed. However, medical professionals stated that the child's injuries were so extensive she wouldn't have been able to walk or function. Fallon was found with bruises not only on her head, but also on her abdomen, arms, and legs, along with internal trauma. On March 18, 2024, Kirsty Hannah Flood pleaded guilty to charges including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated sexual battery, first and second-degree cruelty to children, false statements, and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her live-in boyfriend, Jeffrey Myers, was also charged. Although described as a bystander, he was in a position to intervene but failed to do so. Despite video evidence showing him interacting lovingly with the child and his own admission that she was like a family member, his inaction contributed to her death. Myers pleaded guilty to second-degree murder on March 18th and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. On October 19, 2023, the Gwinnett Fire and Police Departments responded to an early morning apartment fire on the 4900 block of Springs Lane in Peachtree Corners. Upon arrival, they discovered 5-year-old Javion Pruitt unconscious and alone in the apartment. Authorities revealed the boy had been stabbed 22 times in the chest and had died before the fire started. He was later pronounced dead at a local hospital. Officers arrested Azaria Shante Burton in the woods behind the apartment, wearing wet clothing. Evidence presented in court indicated that Burton, facing eviction and claiming to be pregnant, told police she could not take the stresses of life. The day before Javion's death, Burton purchased aluminum containers with flammable gel from a Dollar Tree store and practiced setting the gel on fire. On the morning of the fire, Burton dropped her boyfriend off at work, sent him a text message with the location of the car they shared, ending the message with, "I love you. Bye." She then placed her son in bed, spread the gel around the apartment, and ignited the fire. During her plea hearing, officials offered Burton several opportunities to speak, but she remained silent and showed no emotion. Burton pleaded guilty to charges of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault family violence, first-degree arson, possession of a knife during the commission of a felony, criminal attempt to commit a felony, and tampering with evidence. A Gwinnett County judge sentenced her to life in prison plus 5 years.